That's my PowerPoint, by the way. So you know, right? Okay, good morning. Morning. It's not easy, eh, on a Monday? This early, yeah. Okay, so what I would like to do, Miles was already talking about it, you know, the manifesto. There's so many things going on and people struggling and people having successes. So what I would like to do in my talk here is I would like to take you through the journey that I had, and hopefully I can give you some lessons that will help you in, I don't know, whatever job. Who of you is working as an agile professional? Oh, there's a lot of work to do. Okay, that's good. Who of you read the Agile Manifesto? Yeah, don't, the front row doesn't cut. I mean, come on, right? Okay, so, yeah, so there is a lot of things to be, there are a lot of things to be said about, you know, agile and stuff, and writing the manifesto, and we had a conversation yesterday about change and stuff. So let me start with my change. That's maybe to clarify. As Miles said, I was in Salt Lake City, one of the 17 at the time. Sorry for the ladies, all men. I'm so sorry, can't help it. But let me talk to you about this. So I am from '64, and I was at high school. And at the age of 15, we had those markets, from high school markets, and then you would go to, you know, in buses all together, and there would be a market, and there would be Ministry of Defense, and there would be the university so-and-so, and companies that will try to recruit you, you know, even years before leaving high school. And I went to one of those markets, and I came home, and my mom was there. My mom was a lovely lady waiting for me with tea and cookies when I got home from school. I sat down after 12 kilometers on the bicycle back home from high school, and I said, "Mom, I know what I want to be." She said, "Oh, really? So what do you want to be?" I was 15. I said, "I want to be a midwife. I want to be delivering babies." And, you know, the response at that time could easily have been, "Why do you want to be a midwife? Why don't you become a gynecologist?" Right? Because you're a man, you're supposed to become a midwife, was and still is in the Netherlands. Predominantly done, I think, by ladies, easily 85–90%, right? And at the time it was even more, maybe. And I think this is, it sounds irrelevant, but this is a point that you need to take in, right? You are the architect of your own life. And you need to decide what you do or what you want to do. You need to follow your own gut feeling. And that was my gut feeling at the time. So did high school, got myself, it was not an easy process, but finally I got myself into that education program, was bachelor level, get in, and after a year and a half I thought, no, this is not what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And it was not about the core of the job, the delivering of the babies, but the way it was structured in the Netherlands. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do this. And at the time, it was in the Netherlands mandatory to do your tour of duty in the army. Right, so Arie from the hospital into the army, and I was expected to become, I think the English word is petty officer, a sergeant, you know, group commander, 10 people. And after 2 weeks, my company commander, you know, the training company commander, a major, I don't remember his name, he called me into his office and he said, "Van Bennekum," it's always in the last name in the army, right? "Van Bennekum, yes sir. What do you think about becoming a platoon commander?" I said, "What's the difference?" He said, "Instead of 10, you have 45 people and you make 100 Dutch guilders more a month." I said, "Okay, let's do it." And again, it's about the choices that you make, right? And sometimes it's just opportunism that gives you the opportunity, but you have to see it and you have to take it. And I remember that at the end of my tour of duty in the army, my company commanders asked me, he said, "Hey, Arie, if you want to go to the academy, military academy, just say so. I write a letter of recommendation." And he said, "Because you're a lieutenant now, you can do this." I said, "Do I want to do this for the rest of my life? You know, being in green and, you know, being a professional cowboy?" Because that's, at the time, this is 85, right, when it was. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. So then I made a career change that a lot of people made in those days. I became a software developer. Yeah. Who of you is or has been a software developer? Yeah. So few, eh? So few. And you know that life depends on us these days, right? Writing code. So I got into what is today called in the Netherlands Ernst & Young, Moretta Limberg at the time, you know, started coding. switched to another consultancy firm. And then I got to the Dutch IRS, you know, the tax office. I don't know about governmental institutes in South Africa, but in the Netherlands they have a reputation. And especially the IRS has a reputation that's horrible. You know, they mess up, they're in the newspapers. I think it was 2, 3, 4 years ago, I don't know exactly, they split it up in 3 offices, hoping that it would improve anything, and of course it improved nothing, right? Things go wrong all the time. I was there in a very traditional, you know the waterfall? Everybody knows the waterfall? Okay, so a very traditional waterfall project, and there was a weird thing. So it's one of those long passages in an old 70s building, you know, brown and dark, and I would get in the morning, I would get into because I was a technical designer, I would get into my office with Peter and Ria, because they were also technical designers. We were a team of 3. The whole project was like 30 people. And the room next to us, you can guess, right? There was the team of the functional designers, right? And one of the functional designers would be talking to me. I don't even know the other ones anymore. His name was Jan. And Jan would give me a document. And you remember the days that they would push trolleys, you know, with paper mail, and then they would come into your office and you had your mailbox and they would put it in there. So and I got a functional design document. So Jan was sitting the room next to me. And then I would get an envelope from Jan with a functional design document. And then I would make a technical design. And technical design document was, of course, a different template. So I started always copying about 50% of the copy-paste, right? Functional design into the... And then I thought after a while, this is insane. I mean, I don't know how you live your life, but I feel if I go into any client's office, but especially if you go into a governmental office where you cost everyday public money, right? That's what it is. And I think you have to be, is it morale? Is it pride? I don't know, but you have to get that, you have to have that feeling to deliver something. At the end of the day, when you get into your car back home, that you think, yeah, I did something. Well, I started in November 1993 and it was May 1994. So 30 people, 7 months, full-time working. Do the math, right? How much public money this costs. And it's like, I don't know, 10 in the morning, and Alex, who was the only internal on the project, walks in, he was the project manager, walks into our, guys, we have a meeting at 10, can you come now? Because, okay, so, you know, 30 people in a big room, 10, 15, everybody out. The project was killed. That's what they said, the project was killed. And it sort of pissed me off. If you are working with 30 people full-time for 7 months, spending public money, and then somebody walks into your room and says, oh, by the way, go home, it's done. So I got in my car, and I remember this, right? It was a black 5-doors Nissan Primera LX. Those are the things that you don't forget, right, that moment. And I thought, what do I do now? And I thought, okay, let me do it differently. And I got into the car, and I had to drive like 45 minutes to an hour to the office. And we had 6 managers. And before lunchtime, I spoke to 5 of the 6 managers and I said, whatever happens, I'm never going to do this again. And I thought, okay, you know, if they fire me, I have to find something else. I don't know what, but I'm not going to be responsible for this kind of thing anymore. And then 2 weeks later, I got a call. And one of the guys said to me, one of those managers, business development manager, he said, got something for you. Rapid application development. We do a pilot with the Royal Navy. Who of you heard from rapid application development? If you raise your hand, it says something about your age, okay? So it's just so you know. Right? But it's, the Agile Business Consortium is here, yeah, over there, right? They were doing DSDM. It was the DSDM consortium in the past. And DSDM is based on rapid application development. You know, it's just practical experiences, lessons learned from the rapid application development user groups, at that time predominantly in the UK. The big ones, British Telecom, British Petroleum, British Airways, consultancy firms working together, and the first version was published, right, okay. And I started doing, you know, in 1994, I started doing those rapid application development projects, deliveries. The word transformation in that sense didn't exist, right? So I got that line of work. I got in there, and I didn't have real books that I could read or things that tell me what to do. So I always say this is where the experimenting started, and it never stopped. Now, if you if you look at the waterfall, yeah, sure. If you look at the waterfall, right? And I always make this drawing because in so many so-called agile companies, I see this still happening, and they say, oh, we're agile. Right, here we have the client. Right, so here we have a client. And then let's say this is the analyst, and we have the functional designer and the technical designer, development and test, and maybe pre-ops and ops, right? So there you go. And then what the analyst does is, the analyst makes a document. Have you seen those? Right, and then the document goes to, and then they make another document out of it, right? And then we make another document out of it. Remember, I was here. And then, so, question is, what happens if we communicate? What happens? Oh, it's Monday morning, eh? Yeah. If you communicate, information gets distorted. No matter how you communicate, information gets distorted. And the point is, in this thing here, let me get this marker. In this thing here, look at this, right? Information, it's already distorted now, right? Here, and it distorted again. And the distortion comes from interpretations and assumptions. And then people say, oh, but then you didn't ask enough, you didn't analyze enough, you didn't do this enough. But you know that interpretations and assumptions, you know what the fundament of interpretations and assumptions is? For every human being? Knowledge, you know, your education. It's experience that you have. It's your mood of the day. Did you have a fight yesterday evening back home, or maybe you didn't sleep so well because the little one was crying? Those define your interpretations and assumptions. So, even if I ask now, what did I say so far? Every one of you, I get from every one of you a different story. And that's not a problem. But the problem comes in, okay, how do we, in this process, where we have, here, you know, we have interpretations and assumptions, and here we have interpretations, and here, right? So it's error on error on error. So by the time we're here, something comes out that has no use at all, that nobody needs, nobody asked for. And that's the problem, you know, going back to the IRS that I just talked about, and so many other projects that the client said, yeah, but this is not what I need, this is not what I asked for, this doesn't help me. Right, so in that waterfall, whether you like it or not, we misunderstand each other. And that needs to be solved. We misunderstand each other. That's the thing, nothing else. Right? So on top of this, there are a couple of extra problems. So this person here is a human or a team of human beings, right? And it goes like this. I want a house. Oh, we can do this, we can build a house. How much does it cost? How the would I know? Because what does your family look like? Where is the house going to be? What are the rules, the legislation that's going on there? There's so many questions that need to be answered, right? But still, this person or team will ask, how much does it cost? And when is it ready? And before you know it, you're held hostage by something that you by accident said, yo, I think it would be $1 million. $1 million. And there's no way around it, right? $1 million. So we have the problem in the estimates. Look at this, right? So maybe you recognize this. Okay, we think this is going to take 4 weeks, right? It's 5, okay. And we think this is going to take 2 months. Well, you know, it's 2.5. And we're going to think this is going to take 3 months. Well, 4. But the timeline here is still fixed. And everything in the waterfall that you do at the end of the timeline is under pressure. And I have been literally, you know, when I do agile transformations, I always start with, yeah, we're back. I always start with a maturity assessment. And it's just interviewing people. And I was talking to a QA manager. You know what QA means, right? Quality assurance. Right? And I was talking to the quality assurance manager, and she was responsible for 70 testers. And she said to me, you know, in the interview I was about to go live, she said, oh, Arie, you know, we went live without testing because the pressure from the business was so high because of that timeline. Can you imagine, you know, if you work at a service desk, what's going to happen? Can you imagine if you are a client, what's going to happen, right? You're on the phone. Man, at this moment I work with websites and they are already for weeks not working. And the only entrance that I have for what I need to do is that website. So I'm stuck all the time, right? So the point is that you get very poor quality. And it's just a consequence of the way that we work. And then there's one more, right? And we all know this. Do you also use the term toll gates? Toll gates, yeah. You know what toll gates do? They cost time. That's what they do. Because you need to accept my document. We have to set up a meeting, an acceptance, the horrible acceptance meeting, right? But then we have to find a moment in your calendar, in my calendar, maybe other people involved as well. So before you know it, you're 2 weeks down the line, 3 weeks down the line. We deliver every 2 weeks these days. It's impossible to do. And the reason I say this is that, in so-called agile organizations, I still see people working in steps. So because we have the feature team, and then we have the development team, and then we have the test. It's a bloody waterfall. Nothing else, right? So this is very inefficient. And if you, sorry for my writing, but if you look at what agile is for me, I always say, especially these days where we are, agile is about bringing valuable solutions to operations without delay. That means that, and if you look at this, if you have a misunderstanding, so I deliver something that doesn't help us, I need to do rework. That takes time. If I have poor quality, I have bugs, I need to do rework. It will cost time. Inefficiency costs time anyway, right? So you need to get those out. And I think it was Jeff Sutherland who said at one moment in time, you have to realize if we chop our work up in 2 week sprints, it means that you go live after every sprint. That means after every sprint, the work is done. For those who are into Agile, we use the expression definition of done for a reason. Right, for a reason. And it means that at the end of every sprint, you bring a little bit extra into production that will start generating the benefits to the organization, to the clients, whatever. That's what you do. And if you say, I have a sprint for design, and then I have a sprint for development, and then I have a sprint for test, and then if you're lucky, we have a sprint for the UAT, the user acceptance test. That's exactly what we didn't mean when we wrote 22 years ago, almost 23 years ago, when we wrote the manifesto, right? Now the question is, where does this come from? People don't like change so much, right? So they try to keep the position, try to keep everything as much as what they can recognize and what they can see. And I want to make you this one. So I love an expression from John Kern. He's one of the authors of the manifesto as well. John is from all the others are from the United States, by the way. If you look at the problems that I just wrote down, you can say, now, one is the quality, the other one is the efficiency, and the last one is the value of what you deliver, right? You want to go bring something in production that does something for your organization. And I use the word organization on purpose because it's not for profit organizations only. Any governmental, not-for-profit, whatever, they have their quote-unquote value that they need to strive for, right? So you can easily focus on this. And in terms of doing the work, we have people who looked at the individual or maybe a pair. Then we have what we know is the agile team, let's say 9 or less. And we have the large groups where I was working, right? Large groups. And John Kern had a beautiful expression. He said at one moment in time, he said, the moment that we all walked, 17 men, and we had 13 different frameworks in the room. 13. And that means, okay, so you work different than I do, but I don't know how different you work from me. So it started with listening. And you know how most people listen, right? They listen to criticize, and they listen to say that you're wrong. Right? But this was listen to understand and listen to learn. Right? And John Kern said beautifully, he said, when we walked into that room, we left our egos at the door. Who of you is an agile coach? I see people doing this. I don't know what that means, right? It's like, yeah, maybe I am, I don't know yet. It's Monday morning, let's see at 11 o'clock if I'm still an agile coach. Are you an agile coach or not, right? Yeah, coach, okay. I don't know what it is with agile coaches, but a lot of agile coaches that I meet, they have egos so big. They think they know everything. And nobody knows everything. That's the good news, right? Nobody knows everything. If you look at this, and this is for me was, I started making this one later, but if you look at, focusing on, okay, James Grenning, one of the authors of the Agile Manifesto, he said, okay, extreme programming and test-driven development. If you call James now and you ask him, what do you do for a living? He will say, I'm a software engineer with a passion for quality. He will not even say he's an author of the Agile Manifesto. So that guy is focusing on the quality, right? We have, most of you might know Scrum. We had from John Kern, feature-driven development, and then you have Crystal from Alistair Coburn and Adaptive from Jim Highsmith. I brought in DSDM, these days the Agile Project Management Framework. And I always write extra to this because a lot of people might know this as well, you know, Lean and Kanban. And the reason I'm giving you this, because we always talk about Agile, right? Agile. Agile is not implementing a framework. That's the biggest BS in the world. Because if you do one framework, what you get is a solution from one of the three core problems of the waterfall. And as an Agile coach, this is what you need to know, right? Because if a team has a quality problem, or a team has a value problem, or a team has a, you know, whatever problem they have, you need to understand, oh, you know, this is an interesting one. So I now go back to the extreme programming practices because this is where my solution is for this team. But the team next to it might have a value problem. So let's look into adaptive or into DSDM. Right? So this is why I say Agile, the body of knowledge of any Agile professional or Agile coach. And that's not easy, right? That's what you need to understand. I call this the Agile umbrella. Now, if you look at the real change, we're going back to this here. You know, you can see, okay, we are going to do things in a different way. So how can you cut down those misunderstandings? And I always say Agile is about getting information at the source. If you are my client, I need to talk to you. I need not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they talk to you and it comes back like this. So I need to get to talk to you. And that means that what I do is I bring the stakeholders, whatever the stakeholder is, we come back to this maybe a little bit later, I bring them literally together at the table. You know, prototyping, flip charts, digital prototyping, whatever you do. Because if you say, oh, I would need this, you know, to make my job easier, for example, then it's like, oh, yeah, you just explained it. Can you make a drawing of it, maybe? Of a screen or a process flow. And now I have my interpretations and assumptions, and I can, you know, not waiting for weeks for a document to go up and down, but just in 5 seconds ask you, is this what you mean? You say, no, this is what I mean. So you can converge very fast in that. That's why we say in the manifesto, face-to-face conversation is the best way to convey information. Right, that's what we need to do. If you do it like this, it means that you get a different way of decision making. Coming back to the stakeholders, what is a stakeholder? What is a stakeholder? Come on, talk. Monday morning, you're all fresh. Well, not as fresh as a regular Monday maybe, but you're fresh. Right? Okay, so what is a stakeholder? Come on.
Somebody who pays for the service.
That's number one, right? So you could say that's the business side, right? So we have the business people and their stakeholders. What other stakeholders do we have?
Anyone with interest in the output that you need supporting to deliver.
Yeah, and now the word interest comes in. And I know you're studying law, right? I know you do. So the point is, if I worked a lot in the Agile world for the government. Every single thing that you do, every delivery that you do, has to be checked by the legal department. And then of course we had the communication department, because everything that you send out, a letter or an email, has to be with the right font and with the right logo, with the right this and the right. So I have, next to the business that we talk about, I also have what I call the non-functional stakeholders. I said, hey, before you go live, I have to approve what you did. Now, if I go work in a 2-week sprint, and at the end of the sprint, my business says, thank you, very good. And the legal department says, nope, you don't meet our criteria. What do I have? A delay. I need to avoid delay. So I need to bring not only the business stakeholders, but also what I call the non-functional stakeholders into that sprint. So by the end of the sprint, everything is done, approved, checked, the feedback, and we can go live. That requires a different way of decision making. That requires empowerment down. So when I did my deliveries, I would go to all the managers involved and I would say, you know, from your legal department, who can I get in those 2-week sprint where I have a couple of moments Most of the time I have 2 times a week a moment with all the stakeholders, like half an hour, 45 minutes, that on behalf of the legal department can say yes or no. And I don't want this person to come back to me after a couple of days. Oh, by the way, I talked about it at the department, but still things need to change. No, they need to be able to say yes or no. So that decision making, that empowerment is massively different. And that's why you have a big change in hierarchy in organizations, what people don't like. Right? So the involvement is different. The way you work, the way you collaborate is different. And also, we also talk about documentation. So we do document, by the way. We do document, but not in the old waterfall way. Right? So there is a change in the way we do documents. The way, let me say, we change in the way we document. You know, and documentation is, I think, structured information that is up to date, easy to access, and known by all. That kind of definition. It doesn't say MS Word or PowerPoint or Excel. Right? So you have to be able to change, you know, to look at it a different way. And that's difficult for people. You know where it becomes really difficult? In the paradigm shift. You know what a paradigm is? A paradigm is a perception of the world. And that's a difficult one. A perception of, you know, this is how things are, and now I'm going to change this. That's so difficult for people to comprehend. And it really goes deep. I want to give you an example of a real paradigm change. Miles already said, my girlfriend is from South Africa. I have to tell you something, guys. In the Netherlands, we drive on the right side of the road. You guys drive on the wrong side of the road, okay? That's what you need to know. And if I go down that metaphor, I remember the first time that I came. So you walk to the car, and I see a car. You know, 4 wheels, you know, everything is there. Oh, that's a car, you recognize it instantly. I get into the car, and the steering wheel is on the other side, of course. But you know, that's sort of okay, right? Then you go into traffic, and I never get to the first crossing, and I asked Natasha, I said, how does it work here? You know, how does it work if you go to a crossing? And she said, well, that's so easy. The one who comes first has preference. I said, you should try that in Amsterdam. You should try that one. It's not going to work, I can tell you, because of the paradigms. Right? Now, this is a rule in traffic that's different from what I'm used to. The signs in South Africa are most of the time the same, but there are also quite a few that are new to me, that I ask, hey, what's this, what's that? Now, this is the part that I can learn. You know, I can go to a class, whether it takes a day or a month, but I can go to a class and I can learn. Awesome. Right, so now I know. I get behind the wheel. You don't want to be next to me in Joburg traffic, I can tell you. Right, so I'm behind the wheel, and I come to this crossing, and now I need to realize, oh, you know, different rule. I have to do it. So I don't drive too fast because I know I need time to process all the new rules that are there. And being on the other side of the road, everything there. And as long as I'm alone, that works perfect. But the point in Joburg is you're never alone on the road, right? And it's like in a business. There's always somebody else doing the thing that you didn't expect to come. Now, what happens, you know, if you just imagine now yourself in traffic, right? What happens if somebody does something that you didn't understand? What happens? Your reflexes come in. And your reflexes are based on your old paradigms. My reflexes are based on driving on the right side of the road. And in business, it's so, I call it innovating backward. Right, we're going to work in an agile way. You know, we have those all stakeholder sessions. We have a daily stand-up every morning. We deliver in every sprint 2 weeks. But then somebody does something that we don't understand. So there needs to be a solution. But, you know, we're doing something that we didn't do before. And what is it that happens if you do something that you didn't do before? What happens? Well, most of the time you mess up because you didn't do it before, right? You can be a brilliant rugby team. If I ask those guys that were just on screen if they can play soccer, right? You know what managers do? Said, hey guys, you're a world champion rugby. Now you're going to play soccer. We're going to change. I expect you next month to be world champion soccer. And we know it's not going to work, but nevertheless, this is how it works. You know, in business, in organizations, not just profit organizations, everywhere, right? So we have to understand that if you go into a situation where that problem occurs and you don't have the solution because you've never been there before, what we tend to do is looking to the back of our brain, looking for the solution. You know what kind of solutions are in the back of your brain? The old ones. Yeah, so people like Miles, they come in, they're going to do a transformation for you, right? And awesome. And then one thing goes wrong, and I call it innovating backward. When I did a transformation, after a year or 2 years, I come back and I hear all the agile words, and all I see is waterfall. All I see is waterfall. The meetings, the documents, because if something goes wrong, one of the things that is really a success, and for those of you who are a little bit in agile know the word most likely, a retrospective, that's a key success, because you need to do every time box of 2 weeks, you have to sit down and say, okay, what went well, what can improve, and if we need to improve it, how do we do this in the agile way? Look at the values, look at the principles, look at, at the frameworks that we have, what practice. This is why good coaches, and good coaches are rare, sorry, people. I'm not talking about you and talking generically, right? But they need to say, if this is your problem, innovating forward, this is what we should try with the team in the next 2 sprints. We evaluate every sprint, and then we get there, right? So that means that we have to do a lot of things different. Now, what do you think, if you want to change something in an organization, what do you think is the most important success factor? My God, it's Monday morning. Yeah. What is the most important success factor in any change in an organization? The leadership team. And I want to give you three reasons. So people don't like change. They like their comfort zone. And also they know they're in this structure of this organization. So people from the top look down at them. And there are expectations, right? So what do I do? What is it that I do? So if the people in the hierarchy above you, especially the leadership team, if they start role modeling, the agile way of working, it's more easy to adopt. The role model is number one, because if you're my boss and you do it, okay, it feels safe to do it as well. That's just an emotional step towards change. But there's also much formal stuff, you talk about to change documentation, to change decision-making processes, all these kind of things that requires hierarchy to allow the organization to make that change. So you need formally people high up in the organization to formalize the change that you need. And it can be a role description of the product owner or the scrum master. I was in Belgium talking to a gentleman from the executive committee of Telco, and he said, Arie, we are working with the union for 1.5 years to get the profile description of an agile coach approved. I mean, can you think about it? But without the leadership team, you go nowhere, right? And the third one is sustaining that change. What managers tend to do is something goes wrong in the team, they step in and they say, oh, it went wrong, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. And it should be stepping back and say, guys, listen, you know agile, something is going wrong, do your retrospective, find out. If you need me in any kind of support to make that change, I will help you. I call that sustaining the change, right? Very important. So those things, I just got a signal, I have 5 more minutes left, so it will be 3, I guess. When it comes to agile transformations, I don't know, I'm looking at a couple of agile coaches here in the front row. I don't know how many times you heard this one. That's a very good idea, but it doesn't work for us. And then I would ask, did you ever try? No, but it doesn't work for us, right? How would you know if you never tried? Right, so you need to understand that kind of shift is what we have to make. So people like to point at, and they say, it's because of the leadership team, it's because of the culture, it's because of the asshole next door, it's because of this. They will also always blame somebody else. In the Netherlands, we have this expression, maybe you have it as well. If you point at somebody else, 3 fingers point at yourself, right? And this, I had 2009, I had the privilege of sitting for, I think, 1.5 hours at the table with Mr. Kofi Annan. Remember him? No, he was retired as Secretary General. And my boys were like, 14 and 18 or something like this. And I thought, I need to get a personal message for my boys from Mr. Annan. So I asked him, Mr. Annan, listen. And remember, this is the time where he had the economic ban on Myanmar. Right? So I asked him, what if my boys find an opportunity to do something good for the people in Myanmar? What would you say? Well, he's a politician, right? Or he was a politician, so you get an answer that you have to look through. But he said at one moment, after a minute or two, he said, tell your boys that change always starts with one person. And that means that it comes back to taking your own responsibility. In the beginning I said Agile is about avoiding delay of delivering valuable solutions. We can't get around it. Whether you want to call it, I don't think the word Agile in 10 years will still be there. Agile will be as a word gone. But the way of working, avoiding the delay, because with the technology, you talked about the technology, I mean it has changed business models upside down completely. If you take back to 2008 or 9 when WhatsApp came into the Dutch market, from being very profitable in 3 months, the biggest telco in the Netherlands was on the edge of bankruptcy because they lost their income. Their business model at that moment in time was based on SMS text messages. Gone. And you have to be prepared for this. Right? So you need to make sure that in the way we work and what we do is that in the deliveries that we have, that you cut out the delays. But also, for example, that you bring innovation into your organization as part of your daily operations, because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. It can be COVID, it can be another war with impact on energy prices or whatever. We need to and be able to do this. It's not only the organization that needs to facilitate you, but it's also about you. And then I'm coming back to Mr. Kofi Annan. Change always starts with one person. Thank you.